Yeah, so Vosh, let's start with your religion doesn't improve anything. And yet, as we look at the happiness indexes of the people who are the most religious, they seem to be the most happy. They're also having the most children. They're also divorcing the least. They seem to, out of all the metrics, have the least amount of mental illness. How could you possibly, with a straight face, make the claim that religion doesn't improve anything? All of your positions are material in nature, and they don't seem to work that well. They don't
And
seem to
right off the
answer greater
bat,
questions.
right off the bat, we see the analytical issues. First of all, tracking this onto number of babies had. Historically, the most babies humans have been during pre-modern medieval periods where women were pumping out 11 kids, half them would die in the fields. The number of children you have has nothing to do with how happy you are. Likewise with divorces and marriages. Again, we would have to argue then that the happiest marriages must have necessarily been in the ones in, I don't know, England prior to Henry VIII. You would point back to some time where it was illegal to divorce. These aren't real metrics of happiness. People in general are getting less happy. That is absolutely the case. Why
Yeah, but the
not tie
religious seem to
other...
be less so via self-reporting, and the religious are having the most amount of children. And I have the stats here. If you'd like to review them, I can show this to you and demonstrate it to you. Pew Research has been following this very closely for a number of years, and their indexes seem to be quite good. And yet your materialist outlook seems to claim that libertarian socialism, materialism will save you. And yet we're closer to that worldview than ever. And yet mental illness and all of these factors which lead to unhappiness is higher than ever.
We've only
Least of all
began
with the religious.
tracking. So first of all, as I established, birth rates are irrelevant to this discussion if we're talking about happiness. Second of all, mental illness as well. We've only started tracking mental illness in a meaningful way in the past couple of decades. So this is another factor which you can't reasonably tie to a lack of religiosity. In fact, if you go to our insane asylums and people with severe mental illness issues, you'll find plenty of people there who are deeply religious. The idea that mental illness tracks perfectly onto, or even remotely onto a lack of religiosity is just absolutely not the case.
Well, how
The
can you
problem
make
here...
that claim? That actually makes no sense. You say birth rates can't be tied to happiness, and yet if you have children, you are happier.
Oh, sorry, wait.
How could you possibly say that birth rates wouldn't track onto that? Of course they would.
Do you think people were like at their happiest in India in like 1880 when the average number of children had by every mother was like 8 or 9 at a time during desperate poverty?
This is
I'm asking.
Yeah, this is a red herring. It has nothing to do with
Wait,
anything.
answer the question. If you think
I have
that
no
birth
idea.
rates
I
are...
don't think it's relevant. I have no idea.
I think that birth rates do not track perfectly onto happiness. In fact, I don't think there's any
Yeah,
relationship
but that wasn't my
between
claim,
them at all.
bro. That
You
really
made the
was not
claim
my
that
claim.
higher birth rates are indicative of greater happiness. And I just
No,
don't think that's the case.
no. My claim, just so that you don't straw man it, is that
Okay.
women who have children seem to be happier than women who do not have children. When you look at the birth rate, of course, that's going to map onto that, as women are the ones who have the children. So obviously, if they're happier, they're going to have more children, and as mothers, they're going to have more children. At least this is what the Pew Research shows.
Do you think there might be a confounding variable there? Like maybe the economic stability, which allows people to have children, might make people, happier?
Then why are the poorest people having the most of them?
Because poorer people sometimes are happier, and sometimes they have more children. Or
And
maybe, as per my argument,
happier?
maybe there isn't a strong relationship between how many children you're having and how happy you are.
So what would make poorer people happier than people with all of this materialism? That's really weird, Vosh.
I didn't say that. I was indicating that I think this is an argument in favor of my point. I just don't think these two statistics track onto each other very well. And I don't think you do either, frankly. I think that the reality that when we talk about like what makes people unhappy or what problems we can solve socially, the actual like fabric of a person's mental wellness is so complicated and so multivariate that I would immediately distrust anyone who tried to reduce it to a single variable. I'm more interested in...
hang on. We're not reducing anything to a single variable. That's one. Okay. Nobody said the issue is not multifaceted. However, for you to make kind of this bold claim and gloss it over when you're pinned down on the fact that the people who are the poorest, they seem to be the happiest, at least that's what your claim just was a second ago.
No,
so if that's true, then obviously it must be something other than materialism, which is causing them to be happier. What would you say that is, Vosh?
I didn't make that claim. I said that there are plenty of... No, I said maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's this, as ways of indicating that I don't feel there's a strong track between birth rates and happiness. Birth rates are higher in many parts of the world that are a lot poorer and less happy than the United States. In the United States, it is absolutely the case that poor people tend to have more children. There's also a racial or ethnic element to that as well. But this isn't a perfect one-to-one track. For instance, rural areas where the cities are drying up and dying, there are people who have lots of kids, sure, but they're not happy. I mean, we make I guess sort of reductive comments about white trash families, and I don't think that's fair. But it is certainly the case that there are plenty of households out there where you have both many children and not a lot of happiness.
Well,
I
then
just
this is
think it's
another
too
problem with the
complicated.
materialist worldview, Vosh. When you make this kind of bold claim, don't you think that economics really has a lot to do with whether or not people are having children? And then you cite that the poorest people are having the most amount of children, right? This is a very strange argument from you. So I'm hoping that you
No,
can qualify this and make this make sense to me.
I don't think anything that I said there doesn't make sense. The characteristics that might lead a person to have a lot of children are incredibly complicated. I mean, if you want a full rundown, it correlates more often to people who are poorer, I imagine, because people who are poorer often have a harder time with regards to family planning and management. They also have less strict life plans when it comes to their own career.
They're
Poor
also
people
more
who bounce
religious
around sometimes, but
most of
that
the
doesn't
time.
but they're not the happiest. In fact, there's a very large degree of opioid addiction and unhappiness in highly religious rural communities with lots of children. So it's almost like your attempt to reduce these variables to some kind of simple correlative line doesn't actually work when you look at the material reality
Okay.
of the
Well,
people in this country.
first of all, backing up, you and I have both agreed already that it's multifaceted, right? I'll agree that that's true, but that doesn't mean that some variables aren't far more important than others, which is why you cited an economic variable to begin with. Moving into this, when you're talking about this portion of the topic, which is birth rates, which have become absolutely disastrous everywhere, not just in the
Why?
West, but globally. This was all due to anti-natalist campaigning
Whoa,
from
wait, what's
leftists.
disastrous about our birth rates?
They're in free fall collapse, Bosch.
They've lowered, as they have in every industrialized country,
No,
sure.
in all countries, almost all countries everywhere, with the exception of a few African nations and Middle Eastern nations, and those are dropping off quickly too.
Yes, industrialized countries produce fewer children because you no longer need 8 little tykes to run the farm, of course.
Well, no, that's not the only reason that we have a collapse in birth rate. It's because women are getting married older instead of younger. Now, you could make
They
the
get an
argument.
education.
You could make the argument that this is due to, better family planning or something like this, I suppose. But still, ultimately, if you want to keep your population high, thus keeping your economy good in all nations on planet Earth, you can't just shift around people who don't exist because the birth rate's lower everywhere.
Our
How do you
populations are
plan?
still growing.
No, well, no, they're actually plateauing quickly. And
Uh,
the last UN report showed that, but the most modern UN report on population demographics, which I have in front of me, show that it's much more catastrophic than the UN previously predicted, citing that China, and this came in from a study from, um, sorry, it's on Forbes. I can
well,
link it
China's
over to you.
situation is specific to the one-child policy. I think that was very dumb of the CCP. I'm
Yeah,
talking about here in the
but a
West. Like,
500, they're talking about a 500 million reduction in the Chinese population, potentially by 2050, 2060. That's right around the corner. That's
okay.
a massive population reduction. Japan, within 200 years, is actually slated to not exist. It's slated
I
to
think
not
it'll still
exist due to
exist.
the population.
So is the world population growing or decreasing right now?
Right now, it's plateauing.
The world population, as I understand it, is still growing at a decent
Yes,
clip. I
but
mean,
it's
it went from
going,
6
but it's
billion to 8
plateauing.
billion just in like,
Yes.
sure, that's fine. We
Mhm.
have a finite
And then
amount of
it free
space.
falls. And then it's projected to free fall by every UN analyst and by every scientific metric that you can possibly look at who has looked at this. It's expected to free fall and possibly stabilize at 6 billion in the next 150 years to 200 years. But the
I don't
estimates,
think
the here,
what UN analyst? Yeah, I'd like to see that.
yeah.
Also, assuming that's the case, okay. I mean, it can't grow forever. Like, let's presume that information is accurate.
Mhm.
If that seems fine. I mean, what should we have? 10, 12, 15
Well, so
billion?
here's why this is problematic, Vosh, because the Population Bomb, which was a book that was dropped all over the African nations and India in order to reduce the populations of those nations significantly, it turns out that was very problematic because, as it turns out, the more people you have, the more work gets done and the more people get fed. Right now, due to the increase in population, there's more global food production, the ability to deliver this food globally to people who need it than there ever has been in human history. That's what happens with pro-natalist policies versus anti-natalist
Okay,
policies.
wait, you just answer the what population do you think it should stop at? So, okay, it might stop at 6 billion. What meaningfully is the difference
Oh, I
between
think that
stopping at
the
6 or
Earth could
7?
the Earth can easily, according to analysis, have up to 25, 30 billion people with pretty, it's pretty regular ease
Is that
within
is
that
that
confines of those numbers.
ideal? How is that better than what we have?
Because
What 6 billion?
more people equals more work, less starvation. Less
That's not
starvation for populations, more work for infrastructure building, more work for, I mean, even look at
yeah,
the US labor force now. One of the
but
biggest
fewer
problems.
people to cater to. This is very, very silly. The idea that everything gets better the more people are on Earth, it's just not the case. First of all, like people, the number of humans that are going to end up on the planet and like sort of plateau out at, that's not the same as our maximum carrying capacity. You don't want to hit the maximum carrying capacity for the
Well,
same
we're
reason
nowhere
that
near it.
yeah, I'm saying you
It's
don't
not a
want
problem.
to. And the reason for that is the same reason you don't want to hit the maximum carrying capacity of an elevator or a restaurant,
Yeah, but we don't
maximum
even
and
know what the
ideal.
maximum carrying capacity is, but we do
That's
know we're nowhere near it,
I
and we're
just
also
don't
declining.
understand what the issue is with these broader trends.
Well, I've just
If
explained it to you. You don't want populations in free fall collapse. You
no,
don't even
you
have
don't
enough
want
hands to do the work. What do you
well,
mean?
there will
You don't
so
have that now in the United
the
States.
amount of work, first of all, we get plenty of work done in this country. And second of all, the idea that sure, you have less people doing work, but you also have less people for whom to do the work. Like the idea that you would be doing the same amount of labor if there were 30 billion people on Earth as you have to now with 8 billion people on Earth
No,
is not
man.
the
No.
case.
Labor is scalable. You need to understand labor
Okay,
is
so
scalable.
I don't
So,
think
like, when
it's
you combine two
reasonable.
people together to do a job, it doesn't get done twice as fast. It gets done 4 or 5 times as
That's
fast.
highly reductive and not the case for all things. There are plenty of things like regional economic limits or non-scalability or lacking in land area or climate change changing the available
Give
land or
me a give me
population
a,
shift.
a give me a
No, no,
type
no.
of job or occupation where
There's
that's
not
true of.
there's not any I don't have to provide any argument here because the premise I'm arguing against is nonsensical. Let me construct
So
an
you have no
ideology.
argument.
Let me well, you have to provide an idea
I
first.
did.
And the idea you're providing is what if we had an ideology that made everyone have as much babies as possible? But you need to sell me on this being a good idea because I don't care. Like, I'm not sold on this. I want people who are alive to be happy. I want the human species to do well. I think that the human species did pretty well at 6 billion. I'm sure it would do pretty well at 8 or 10 or whatever. But the idea of orienting all of my political beliefs around hitting
Okay.
some kind of
So
maximum
I'll try a different
population.
angle for you then if that's your approach. You do agree that you do want some people on planet Earth, right? At least some number
Ideally.
of them?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I want
Okay,
human
so what
civilization
number
to
would that
proceed.
be from your perspective?
I don't care. That's the thing. That
Okay, well
end
then
number
what's the argument here?
that well,
So
no,
we both
that's
want
no,
people.
you
We
have
both
to
want
explain
people,
to
and
me how
if the
you
birth rate reduces so a population collapses and there's no people, that bad.
you
So we
have
can
to
agree on that.
explain to me how shifting our entire like political mindset to accommodate some arbitrary goal that you've just made up in front of me is necessary at all. I think that if we
It
build
can't be
good
arbitrary if you agree we need
if
humanity.
we no the
Wait,
end point is still
the
arbitrary.
gap really quick.
Well,
So
really, really quickly, I just want to ask, like, or I just want to put forward, like, the point here, really, really quickly. Okay, I think that we should build good political systems that make people happy and encourage growth and economic stability and all those wonderful things. I do not think we need to orient everything about some kind of psychotic pro-natalist perspective where we try to keep women out of colleges and in the home, so every single one of them has like 7 children. I don't
all right,
think that's
Nobody. Okay, first of all,
hang on. Let me-
you're
sorry,
all you're doing there.
stop.
All you're doing there is framing. I never made the argument that
Okay.
women must do anything. What I told you is that we have a birth rate that's in free fall. You agree that we need to at least have some humanity, which means you have to at least replace the people who are in existence. So you and I can at least agree that every human being should probably have at least one other human being to replace them, right? Or if not, there needs to be some number of humans on planet Earth. So if that's true, and you and I agree that that's true, then having a declining birth rate, that would be catastrophic for both of our worldviews.
if it leveled out at
I'm
6
just gonna-
billion.
hang on, stop. I'm going to step in for 1 second and just kind of bridge the gap a little bit. So you guys both agree that there needs to be humans on Earth, but the difference is that Vosh is saying, "Hey, I don't understand why it's important for us to increase the amount of people that we have on the planet now." Andrew's saying, "Hey, I think that would actually be better." So that's what Vosh is asking.
The problem
that's actually incorrect. So what I'm saying to you is that the amount of people who are on planet Earth right now are slated to significantly decrease down to maybe half or below
I've
what
not
the
seen
current
any numbers to suggest
status is right now. Okay, well, I've just linked the article over to you.
Half or
China's
below?
population right here.
What about
And
world
This
population?
is the projection. Now, the world population, the UN projection was at 6 billion. However, the trend is very, very quickly going the other direction. I can send you an article on this as well.
Telling as the world
So they're
industrializes.
saying that it could be reduced to as little as 3.5 billion to 4 billion. They don't know.
These are speculative numbers that don't actually tie in with like the broader consensus. Look,
well,
the
what's
issue
not
here,
speculative though is the number of, or what the birth rate is at for the percentage of the population.
Invariably, no matter what point you hit, you will hit periods of general like population decline, because it's not possible to perpetually maintain growth or stagnation. There will be waves up and down. This is inevitable. I think that what's the problem here is that this is all fake policy. There is no such thing as like global pro-natalism or anti-natalism. You said earlier the left does anti-natal. This is nonsense.
Let me give you an
reality,
example.
People have children and are able to have children in line with the material circumstances they live in. Are they educated? Do they have the money? Do they have the space in their household? Are there cultural values that incline them towards having more children or not? These are the things that we can do and control. Now, if we're to have a discussion on what we should promote, here's something I think we could do. Okay,
No. Let me respond to these 2 points because both of them are inaccurate. The first one is the 2 points that you smuggled in. The first point that you smuggled in was that people can only have children based on material conditions. Not true. They have children outside of the scope of their material conditions all the time. And that's why you see some of the poorest nations in the world breeding more than any other nation. So this is first of all, this is patently false. Hang on, let me finish. I just let you give your argument. Let me give mine back.
You just described those are the material conditions. Material conditions doesn't mean if you're rich enough. It means that the circumstances that surround you give you the ability and inclination to do something. Poverty inclines people towards having lots of children. That is a material condition.
Man, okay, fine. Even if I grant this, okay, this kind of second thing which you smuggled in is that the left has no anti-natalist policy, but they do. They're the by far the largest advocates of abortion everywhere on planet Earth. That's a left-wing socialist policy for sure. Even back to its roots, it was a socialist policy. There's no doubt that that's true. They're the ones who dropped the population bomb all over planet Earth via helicopter in order to get people to stop breeding. Yes, they have had significant anti-natalist policies. It's absurd to say otherwise.
So you're saying that giving people the choice as to whether or not they want to have children, it leads to a decrease in how many children people have?
Well, again, this is a smuggled in premise.
I'm just asking you.
You're not giving them the choice. You're saying you can't kill your offspring. There's a distinction to be made.
The legality of abortion is giving people the choice to have or to not have children. It leaves out the possibility of accidentally having children.
This is your bad worldview.
No.
Please making the assumption it's not murder.
Stop complaining that literally anything that doesn't immediately like pre-pack your framing into it is some kind of biased question, okay?
Well, then don't complain immediately that I accept your framing as being true.
My framing is that if people have the option to abort a fetus, that they will have less children. I think that people should want to have the children they have. So I want to build a society in which maybe people have more children, but they're amped about it. And what that means is supporting material policies, like, for example, free childcare or better tax credits or legal mandates for corporations to provide maternity and paternity leave. Those are examples of things that socialists tend to support and would massively increase the viability of having children, even in an industrialized country. That's real politics.
If that's true, then how come in the nations where these things are implemented, you have not seen the birth rate make a recovery, Vosh?
Well, I think that there's more to it than that.
Right. So then why are you giving me policies that don't work? I don't care.
They do.
Give me policies that work.
They do work.
Well, then show me how they work.
Okay.
And where they work.
Wait, do you need me to explain to you how like state subsidized daycare makes it easier for people to have kids?
Why? It has not done any reversal to the birth rate in the nations which have implemented it.
Well,
none.
Wait, do you have data that demonstrates it as absolutely
yes,
no
the
effect,
birth rate, which nation
century?
would you like to cite? And I'll give you the birth rates and that they're on the decline. Absolutely.
What specific policies wait, hold on. They're on the decline. Is it possible they would be more on the decline if it wasn't for those policies?
It's possible.
Then how do you know?
However,
Wait, no, that's
however,
so you
even if it
confidently say you have
even
data
if
that
it were,
demonstrates
but even if it
correlations for
were,
positive
they
behavior.
don't. You say that these are the policies which would reverse the trend. They don't reverse the trend.
I can give more. So
Then
a lot
give
of
more.
it, sure, a lot of it also has to do with work culture. Even in a society in which people are given the opportunity to have children with state mandates and subsidies and what have you, there's a huge issue of like people lose out economically on a lot by having children. A lot of this also has to do with like keeping dads in the home, right? Like if a dad takes 6 months off work, even if it's part of paternity leave, that is a rough sell economically, and it can disincentivize their future promotions. I think that we should have a culture that is much more permissive towards people not being nonstop 24/7 workaholics, because that shit kills families. Not only does it prevent people from having kids, it also fucks up the kids if they are born.
This is a
because dad's always out
restatement
of the
of
house.
the same exact claim. You're giving a material position to this, and yet in the places where you have these material positions, like France, for instance, where you have a reduction in the work week and you do have these types of childcare programs, you still see the collapse in free fall of their birth rates. This is not reversing these trends.
Wait, hold on.
Whatsoever.
One second. France birth rate over time. You use very scary words like collapse and free fall, and I just want to make sure that it looks
Look it up
like
yourself.
it looks like hold on one second. It looks like it's been holding roughly steady for decades.
What? Send it in the private chat.
People.
Let's take a look.
Yeah, wait, I have it shown here. So it looks like in percentage increase and decrease, there's been like a 2% aggregate decrease since. Wait, hold on. So it's in the year of our Lord. What year is this? Wait, hold on. Sorry.
2020.
2000. Right. No, 2000. 12.7. And then right here you had down to 1. So I guess
as of 2020, France was at 1.83 births per woman. That's not even replacement rate, Vosh. You have nothing here.
Okay, but what's the rate over the past few decades?
You need to have at least 2.2. But even if that were true and the rate were still decreasing past your policy implementation, it hasn't reversed it. It hasn't done what you want it to do, man.
So wait, again, you don't seem to understand how this data works. The whole point of like inferring causality and why it's bad is that you don't know whether or not these would have been worse otherwise. So I'm looking at macrotrends.net on the France fertility rate, where it seems like back in 1978, they had 1.86 births per woman, and right now they have 1.86 births per woman. There's been about a bunch of like fluctuation, but over the past 45 years, the French birth rate has stayed basically the same. So I don't like.
You're talking about a negligible difference right now
over 40 years stability. 40 years
in the year 2020. The United States at 1.64 birth rate, and France is only negligibly at 1.8. This is a negligible distinction, utilizing the same policies that you advocate for.
We were talking about France, and I just don't like you using terms like collapse and free fall when what we actually see is total stability over the past 40 years. I mean, that's
no, we don't. In fact, I'm pulling it. Their birth rate looks exactly like, their birth rate looks exactly like ours. It has been collapsing since World War II. There's no doubt that I'm looking at the data.
Okay, wait, I'm going to link you this really quickly so you can see what I'm seeing, because I feel like we're talking past each other a little bit.
If you want to share the screen, just add it and I can share the screen. That's
here. Well, I've just linked it.
Just put it in the private chat and I'll get a look at it here.
There.
I have linked it. I've linked it right there. And as you can see, the French birth rate has remained stable for nearly 45 years now, which is pretty significant, I feel. Unless I'm misreading this data, but it was at 1.86 per woman back in 1978. And it's the same today. So again, like free fall and stability are
1.5. So we see a historical collapse. We see in the UN projections and yet another collapse. So listen. This is still a collapse.
Wait, what collapse? I'm looking at a horizontal line. What is your definition of collapse? Where's the collapse?
Yeah, so I'm going to send you over the counter data. Because this is not correct.
In the data, okay. So you're contesting the data, but in the data that I'm looking at that I just sent you, the macro trends link, you would agree that this is not a collapse. This is stability, right?
According to this particular projection, what I see is a massive free fall, which happened. You would agree that that's a free fall, right?
Well, it decreased. Free fall
Yeah.
implies like a lack of stability when in fact our countries are the
Well,
most
I
stable
mean,
and
so it
powerful
goes
in all of
down.
human history.
Okay, so it starts at 2.8 and it goes all the way down to 1.8. That's
See,
a
just
significant
free
collapse.
fall is like panic language. It's like woman stuff, you know.
And then it goes down to one.
Free fall,
Okay,
like,
fine,
you
fine,
fall off.
whatever. The language, you don't like the
no,
language.
it's important. It's like saying like the number of horses used in public travel free fell after 1920, and it's like, okay, it didn't really free fall, it decreased. But I don't like, because free fall implies some kind of like catastrophic event, you know.
And do you see on your line graph that you gave me where it says the word current? If you hover your mouse over there, do you see in the 2023 boxed into the red, what does that say?
Minus 0.05%. Yes.
Right. So it's still on a slight negative trend down, even according to your data. However, I'll give you data from the UN, which still predicts this free fall.
At that rate, in 100 years, it would not have even reduced by 0.1 births per woman.
Yeah. So this is France's birth
let me see your
rate
data.
fell by 7%. 7%, and continues to decline according to the French National Institute for Statistics and Economic Studies. 24,000 fewer. Yeah, I'll send it over to you via the private chat. Yes. So this, I would have to dig into your fertility rates to understand if maybe there was an offshoot there.
I just Googled it. I know that there was a significant decrease in the Western world's birth rates as we moved into modernity, post World War II, such and such, for sure. But since then, I feel like the numbers have been more or less stable, though there is some variety.
They're not stable.
Wait, hold on. Okay, so the problem here is that this is a panic article. Why on earth would you ever try to assess a nation's average birth rate, but with a single year of data?
Dispute the numbers.
So, okay. So the way numbers work is if you want to analyze trends of stuff like birth rates in a nation that go forward and backward decades, you try to use like larger aggregate data rather than
like global data.
Sure, like over decades and decades.
So let me give you the global data.
The global data shows the population is increasing. But again,
what does the global data show about birth rates though, Bosch?
The birth rates are decreasing. The population is increasing.
So can you perpetually have a birth rate which decreases and a population which increases, Bosch?
No, but I don't want a population to increase.
No, forever. You can't.
Oh, what happened?
I don't know.
I guess his internet crapped out. Let's give him a minute. I wrote down a few things I want to bring up after you guys are done, but I'll let you guys. Okay, there he is.
I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button. I thought I was closing a link, but it turns out I was closing another link. Hi, sorry. Okay, yes. I heard you. You said we were talking about the birth rate falling even if the population increases. Sorry, that was my debate.
Yeah, the birth rate is still falling even if the population is slated for an increase temporarily.
That's fine. I'm fine with that. Yeah.
But we don't actually know that the population is slated for the kind of increase.
Weren't we talking about France?
I'm going to show this. I'm going to show this to you so that you understand the reason. Well, France was actually a sideline to this. However, you asked me for an argument for why it is that Christians are pro-natalist, essentially, and why we see that as a massive problem. You can see this competes, and there is data linked within that link, which is competitive to the UN models, which shows that the UN models could be vastly incorrect with their projections.
I can't really engage with a random 4-citation article that says, hey, maybe the UN and all that data is wrong and there are millions of calculations and predictions.
Okay, would you like it from Forbes instead?
You are not going to convince me that the population is about to engage in erratic free fall. I think we should just talk about what policies we want to put forward. Well, it's not. It's objectively not happening.
It is objectively happening globally, yes.
Birth rates decreasing and population decreasing are different things. You can't have a nonstop birth rate of 6 children per woman. That's not a sustainable birth rate.
First of all, why isn't that a sustainable birth rate?
You know how? Okay, are you familiar with the concept of thermodynamics? If you have 6 children per woman, assuming a modern day survivability rate into childhood, you would eventually, over the course of like a century, multiply the human species into unsustainable populations.
Hey, Bosch, do me a favor and close your eyes for a second, just a second, and tell me what the first law of thermodynamics is.
What does that have to do with the mass?
You don't even know. Why would you ask me if I'm
No,
familiar with
I don't remember which
thermodynamics? You
ones
don't
are
know
which.
anything about
I don't remember which ones
thermodynamics.
are which. It's
You
the
fucking break.
equal and opposite reaction and the. So wait, what does that have to do with like the what does that have to do with like, so you don't understand how an exponential growth in the
You
human
can't tell me I don't
population.
understand something, cite
Can you- wait,
thermodynamics, and then
so,
prove that you have no
Andrew,
understanding of thermodynamics.
You can't smoke a cigarette and like sip whiskey out of a skull glass and then like pretend that we haven't arisen like a problem here. You need to explain to me how you don't think it's an issue to exponentially increase the human population.
No, my ask of you was, you made the claim that this would be a problem if every woman on planet Earth had 6 children. I asked you why that would be a problem, because that's your claim.
And I said, and you might recall this, I said, because we have a finite amount of space, and if we do that, we would bring the human population beyond a sustainable level.
Okay, so I could agree with you in theory.
This is such a silly conversation.
So
like,
hang on. So I can agree with
about...
you. I can agree with you in theory that would be true if it was perpetual, with like you know, this was for every single woman forever.
Andrew,
that,
I
yes,
said
that would likely happen. But
we can't have a 6 children per woman birth rate forever. And you asked why not. Now, don't pretend you didn't say that.
But do you know why I did that? I asked you this
that?
because I wanted you to land on the number which is sustainable.
Which is?
I don't know. I'm asking you.
What I don't.
You say that you say X is not sustainable. I can agree to that, but what number is sustainable?
So your argument then is that we should magically make women produce a exponentially larger number of children until we just eventually happen to hit the maximum possible amount of children or like people we can have on the planet, and then we have what, a bunch of like war and resource conflicts. We're running out of drinkable water as it is in many.
I haven't even put forward a policy. Why are you arguing?
I know,
against
because you have nothing.
You're arguing against strawmen.
No.
Ask me for a policy instead, and I'll ask you for one.
I've asked you for policies multiple times.
Okay, so if you want a specific pro-natalist policy, which I have, would be eliminating abortion. That's a pro-natalist policy.
Phenomenal. I don't care. I think that if people are going,
well, you don't care, but I haven't given you any policies.
No. It's been like 40 minutes, and it's all been vibes from you. It's all been like, well, I think it should be like this. Tell me why
arguments?
An infinite number of humans
I'm giving
wouldn't be a good idea. But you haven't even provided an argument for why we should just catapult the human population to the maximum possible level this planet can hold. Like, morally.
Well, first of all, I didn't tell you. I didn't tell you to push it to the maximum limit. What I said to you is that what we have seen as a trend, and I'd love to see you disagree with this, is that more people equals less starvation, as opposed to when there was less people and more starvation. And every single scientific study I've seen on this proves that this is true. Even
is that
the
a causative relationship?
Even the vegans know that this is true.
Is this a causative relationship, or do you think that
yes, it's a causative relationship?
So you're saying that even though we already have enough food to feed all humans on Earth right now, we need more people to make more food to feed more humans, so we have less starvation than the theoretically none we could be having right now?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of loaded presuppositions there. The first loaded presupposition. Don't cut me off when I answer your question.
Well, you're not answering the question.
I'm answering it. So first of all, your loaded presupposition there is nobody said that we even have enough food right now for the entirety of the population. You just smuggled that in.
No,
we do. It's the ginormous cost of human labor, which is what allows that food to go all over the world. The United States, for instance, massive exporter of food. We are an importer of food as well. Other nations are, but it's due to the fact that we can export and import. You can get things like salt and pepper and all of these other different things. So, how do you think salt mines work? How do you think food is gathered?
Wait, hold on. We already have food. You're arguing that we need 30 billion people on Earth in order to get things that
we would at least need to sustain the current population.
We can. We have enough to.
Well, then why is the birth rate going down, genius?
What?
How are you going to sustain it? If your argument is
Andrew, I sincerely want to know, what on God's green earth are you arguing right now? I genuinely have no idea.
You said to me, why is it that we should keep it sustained? So I tell you why we should keep it sustained. You say we have enough workers and food right now. However, if the birth rate's too low and the population goes down, we won't have those workers, right?
The population is currently increasing.
And it's slated to do what soon? Go which way, up
the
or
birth
down?
rate, some people say that it's going to decrease, which would happen if we hit
Some
the
people
maximum
say.
population as well. You realize that if we
I'll
had
tell
a
you what,
gigantic
show me a
wait,
single
please,
credible
please, I
scientific
can't,
source that says it's gonna
listen
go
to
up.
your irrational rambling for that much longer without arriving at something that even
You mean
resembles a
completely
point.
rational arguments you can't refute?
No, not even remotely.
Yes.
So you
Yeah, well, then
realize that
refute
even
one.
if we had a gigantic population boom and we hit it and we plateaued at what, 35 million, there would still be constant fluctuations in the overall population, which would have their own economic cycles, crises, and
Stop
rejuvenations.
trying to shift the topic. We were exactly where
wait,
we
you can wait.
You
So
asked me
you're
about
saying,
lowering. You said
oh
we
my
have enough
God,
people now.
you
Here's
can't answer
Vosh's exact
anything.
words. Here's
Andrew,
Vosh's exact
Andrew,
words. We
you're saying all
can
of this
sustain.
needs
Right
to be
this.
done.
Stop cutting me
You're
off,
saying-
Vosh. Let me
Andrew,
finish, and then you
Andrew,
can talk.
You cut me off. You're saying
Okay,
that
you
all of
tell
this
me when
needs to
you
be
give me
done.
the signal for when you're done talking, and then
Okay.
I will go ahead and refute what you're saying.
All right, it will be a while. So you're saying all of this needs to be done to avoid the problems associated with population decrease, but that would also happen even if we hit the maximum carrying capacity of the planet, because population fluctuations are an inevitable part of all human civilization, depending on a variety of internal factors. So we would never even be fully rid of the problem of the population occasionally decreasing. That's one. For two, you've made the argument that we need more people to feed more people. This makes absolutely no sense. We have enough resources on the planet as it is, and we're going to run into more resource issues the more people we have. Because in addition to climate change literally eating up millions and millions of square miles of like arable population-filled land, we also have the broader problem that these are not like problems we need to solve right now. We already have the resources necessary to feed as many people as we want within our own population. If you want to increase the population, again, this isn't like a policy first issue. If you want, there are policies that you can promote. And if people are happy and feel like they can, maybe they can have more children. But the idea of like, we need to drop everything right now and change everything. No. Wait, I said I'd tell you. The idea that we need to drop all sensible policymaking and forget about socioeconomics as a concept just so we can pursue this arbitrary goal of inflating the population, creating, by the way, massive resource conflicts, because quadrupling the human population within a century or two would inevitably lead to massive conflict, because those gains would not be distributed evenly across populations, people with different territories that wouldn't be fully settled. So we're causing all these problems for what? If you want to ban abortion, just say ban abortion. Like, don't, it's like,
I already
it's like
have.
earlier,
but
well,
now back to my argument.
No, wait, I didn't say, wait, you said,
are you ever going to give the fucking signal?
Discipline. Well, I told you, well, discipline is being a man, making promises and filling to those promises. Okay, so you have to wait a bit longer. Earlier on in your opening statement, you whined about the left and feminism.
Just a gish gallop, Vosh. Let me respond to your point.
Well,
so listen, this is ridiculous. Your initial argument was such.
Conservatism.
Hang on. Your initial argument was such. What you said was this. You said we already have enough people to sustain. You just made the argument again, by the way. We already have enough people to sustain this, and we can deliver global food because there's plenty of food right now with the current population we have. But you also agree that the population is slated to go significantly down by the birth rate. You know this. You've conceded that it's true. These two things cannot make sense together. You can't say, why are you advocating a pro-natalist policy when we already have all the people that are required in order to deliver all this food? Well, because in the future, don't cut me off, didn't cut you off. In the future, we're not going to have this population. We can see it in all the trends, including the UN forecast. That's why we need a pro-natalist policy. And you, the materialist, is still arguing against it, even knowing that that's true.
I don't think you have pro-natalist positions. I think that what you're talking about would actually wreak devastation and mass death on an unprecedented scale.
Which part?
But thankfully, it doesn't matter, because what you're saying is gobbledygook. It's nonsense. The idea of like, what's my first policy position? Make more babies. How about this? Take an average American man, good old earnest man. Okay, how are your policies going to make his life better? Okay, we're talking about a voter. A good old boy. How is he benefiting from this scheme to, if we had 30 billion people, then we could feed 30 billion people?
That was not my scheme. You just, again, one more time, you're completely mischaracterizing and strawmanning my position. I never made the affirmative statement that we needed 30 billion people on planet Earth. You just made the thing. You made it up out of the blue so that you could argue with a straw man. It's bad faith tactics, by the way, Vosh, but they won't work.
You aren't making any affirmative.
So again, I'll go ahead and make the affirmative statement for the policies that I would want to see. Yes, I would absolutely be against abortion. that would be a number one, and that would be a pro-natalist policy, not an anti-natalist policy. You haven't made an argument for how that would be anti-natalist. That's insane. And then how this would benefit streamline America is we need to have workers ourselves here. We need to have a replacement rate for our own population in order to sustain itself. Other populations, which we recruit immigrants from, they're also in free fall collapse. You cannot, and you might take issue with the language, but they're in at least a birth rate collapse. You can't endlessly take from other populations, which are also in collapse. This is a serious and significant global problem that needs to be addressed. It's beneficial to everybody to address it. Also, if you're just looking at the simple metrics for women, women are happier with children. Across the board, this is true. They are happier and report their happiness level as being higher with children. There's no study that shows otherwise.
Is that a
Pew, again,
bit of research there, or is it just women with children tend to be happier? Is it causative or correlative? Do you know the difference between the two?
Yeah, but what are you talking about?
Is it causative or correlative?
In this particular case, according to Pew, anyway, it looks like it's both causative and there's a correlation there.
Okay, can you tell me what the difference is between a causative and a correlative?
Yeah, one causes and one's a correlatory. There's lots of correlatories, but correlatories can be part of a cause too, Vosh.
Okay, so what in the study indicates that they, in Pew Research polling, this is extraordinary. I've never heard that Pew Research
because they ask them before you had kids, were you happy? And they went no. And then they said, well, after you had the kids, were you happier? And it wasn't due to the kids, and they said yes. That's how.
Okay.